Hi there, in this episode we're going to look at the powers of Congress. Now, many of the powers that Congress has today are literally laid out in the Constitution. We call these express powers or enumerated powers. And of course there's a wide variety that are set up in Article 1 of the Constitution. In addition, there's also what we call implied powers. Implied powers are those that aren't laid out nice and neat in the Constitution. They're put into place because of the elastic clause. The elastic clause is also called the necessary proper clause. At the end of Article 1 in the Constitution, the framers kind of put a loophole. They basically said, okay, here are all the powers of Congress, but we realize that over time, things might change. So we're going to put in this necessary and proper clause. And basically what it says, if the nation needs something, it's necessary, and it's a good thing, it's proper, then Congress should have the power to enact it. Now, there's all kinds of different powers that are both implied and expressed. We're going to start out with money powers. Congress has very many expressed powers when it comes to finance. The most important by far is the ability to create and collect taxes. You should remember that the main problem with the Articles of Confederation was the federal government's lack of ability to tax. It crippled us. So with the Constitution, this is going to be a focus. In addition, you should remember that the House of Representatives has the power of the purse. All policies, all tax laws, all spending bills, all of those have to be started in the House of Representatives. In addition, express powers in the Constitution include Congress's ability to borrow money, coin money, literally physically make it, and punish counterfeiters, people who are making fake money, and establish bankruptcy laws. On the implied powers side of things, they're allowed to use those tax dollars to support what they think is necessary, things like education, welfare, public housing. And in addition to this, they've also created what is called the Federal Reserve Board, and it oversees our national debt. Next up is commerce powers. Commerce is basically a big fancy word for trade. Express powers, powers that are written out in the Constitution, allow Congress to regulate foreign and interstate commerce or trade. So foreign, of course, is when we're trading with a different country like China or France. Interstate commerce is when we're trading with amongst the states. So if we're trading with Georgia, we're trading with Alabama. Interstate commerce is also controlled by Congress. When it comes to implied trade powers, this has been used to actually bring about some equality. It allows Congress to prohibit discrimination in restaurants and hotels. Think about the civil rights movement and the Jim Crow laws in the South, where African Americans weren't allowed in the same restaurants or hotels. It's going to be, this is going to be used to put a halt to some of those laws. Next up is military and foreign affairs powers. Congress has the ability to declare war. Many people think this is the president, but it's not. It's Congress. Congress also has the ability to raise and fund an army and navy. It can also punish acts committed on international waters. When it comes to implied powers, what that's used, the raise the army and the navy, implied, that means that they believe they can draft people into the military if needed at a time of war. Other legislative powers. When it comes to express powers, Congress has the right to create naturalization laws. Who can go through the process of becoming a citizen. It can and has established a post office. It regulates copyrights and patents on new material and new inventions. It has the ability to govern over Washington, D.C. And then, of course, lastly, we have that loophole where it can provide laws that are deemed necessary and proper. When it comes to implied powers here, they're going to be able to limit the number of immigrants allowed into the United States as part of those naturalization laws. Now, there's several powers that are denied Congress, and they're literally written out in the Constitution. One of the big ones was the ability not to make any laws concerning the slave trade until 1808. This was actually part of a compromise that was put into place between the North and the South when the Constitution was written. After 1808, importing slaves into the United States became illegal. Next up, Congress cannot suspend the writ of habeas corpus. What the writ of habeas corpus means is that you can't just arrest somebody. You have to bring them before the court, kind of like what we would call an arraignment today, and tell them what they are being charged with. There is an exception to this rule, though, and that is in the time of war. So if you are arrested for treason or something during wartime, you do not. They can lock you up and not have to bring you before the court. The next one that Congress cannot do is called an ex post facto law. You can't punish a person for a crime if there was no law against it. And you can't pass the law just to punish that person because you didn't like what they did. In addition, at first there was no direct income tax. Of course, this is going to change with the 16th Amendment. There's no taxes allowed on exports. And all states had to be treated the same. It didn't matter what size you were. They were all supposed to be treated the same. In addition, Congress must approve all expenditures of the president through laws. They can't just say, no, the president can't spend that money on this or that. They actually have to pass a law, and the president has to sign it as well. And lastly, they're not allowed to offer titles of nobility. So just because Congress likes you does not mean that you're going to be named the Duke of Palm Bay. In addition, the Constitution spells out powers that are denied the states. Remember, we have a federal system in hopes of creating a separation of powers between the different levels of government. So for states, they cannot coin money. There is no Florida dollar or Florida nickels. Only the federal government is given that power. They cannot have a navy or an army or a militia. They can have a national guard, but they are not allowed to have their own real military. They cannot make treaties. You know what I mean? Florida cannot negotiate with Cuba about trade or anything along those lines. That's the federal government's job. Likewise, they cannot issue ex post facto laws. You can't punish somebody if no law has been broken. They cannot suspend the writ of habeas corpus, just like the Congress cannot. They cannot import or export tax anything. They too cannot make you the Duke of Palm Bay. And lastly, they cannot pass any laws that the federal government is not allowed to pass either. Okay, that's it for this time.